We're away. Fantastic. PT graduate, Rich Ellis, and interviewing Richard Beddie. Many thanks for joining me this morning, Richard. It's a real pleasure to have you on here, particularly in a week where we've been locked down. And I didn't expect this to happen, so thank you very much.
You're welcome. And yeah, well, obviously we didn't expect the lockdown, but also I think we're all pleasantly surprised with the relatively quick return to normality. So it's a little bit of a sigh of relief for us all, especially the Aucklanders, I think.
Yeah, absolutely, of which I am one. So yes, it's just quite a relief. So today I wanted to obviously the key theme for us at PT Graduate is talking about keeping PTs in the industry, helping them survive the first couple of years, which can be the most testing time.
Yep.
Not only that, of course, I wanted to pick your brains on other things, as it's a great opportunity to talk to you. I've been looking into your history, and obviously you've been in the industry a long time. You've been an operator. You've owned multiple gyms prior to the role that you do now. But my first question was really how it all started. What kind of got you into that in the first place? Where was the spark? What was the interest?
Yeah, look, I think I have a slightly unusual track into the industry, and I'll try to keep it short. But if you go way back prior to this industry, when I went to school, I went to an all boys school, and of course, all men play rugby in New Zealand. And I remember getting a note from my mum that said I didn't have to play rugby. I can't quite remember the context, but for some reason, obviously, I didn't want to, or didn't, and that was very unusual. And I was not a physically active kid. I felt like I did not identify as an active person. I was somewhat overweight. I would say not the same as today's obesity and overweight issues, but I was probably carrying 10 kgs too much, which would have made me one of the 3 kids at school that was overweight. But that's ridiculous. And it's funny enough because that sort of stuff still sticks in your mind. You ask people how they identify, and you go, "Oh, yeah, I'm sort of that overweight kid from school." But the reason I say that is that it's not to say, "Oh, who cares about what I did and whether I was overweight." It's the fact that in this industry, it doesn't really matter where you came from, and it's not about with so much sport, it's about what did you do and which gold medal did you win. Well, not only did I not get one, but I got a note from my mum that says it wasn't important. So, when I went to the gym industry, I went to university having not exercised and tried to get out of any form of structured physical activity. And a friend of mine, she said, I want to go to the gym, which at the time was sort of a little unusual. You went to the gym, but like why we had personal trainer because you're a movie star or you're an athlete. But other than that, why do you go to the gym, right? Men build muscle, women lose weight, but that was about it.
Yeah.
But invited to go along and said, well, will you give me a lift in the morning? And the kind of deal was I would turn up to her window at 6 o'clock in the morning and bash on the window because she wasn't getting out of bed. And the only reason she got out of bed was because I was there. But the only reason I went is because I had to give her a lift. So it was actually sort of mutually beneficial. And I remember her telling me after a couple of years after this, she goes, I never used to stand next to you because you were so uncoordinated in the classes. But she only told me this years later. This was after I'd become a group exercise instructor, or as we called it at the time, aerobics instructor. And so that's kind of where I got into the industry, aerobics, teaching aerobics. And when I bought my first gym, I'll be very honest and say all I knew is that I thought I could do it better. I had no idea how to manage staff. I had no idea how to market a product or sell a product or do all the things you needed to be able to do. But I thought, I don't think it's a bit like, I can go to a restaurant and go, I think I could run this one better. Now, the reality is I'm not a chef. I don't know how to do customer service, but I do think this is not working. And I think you could change some things and make it better. And that's literally all I knew. I had a bit of a passion for the industry. Obviously, I taught classes, but I had no idea what to do. And that kind of grew from a gym into, eventually 2 gyms. And I went away and did an MBA in the process. I got involved with what was then Fitness New Zealand, basically sort of turned up to an AGM and started asking questions. And then before you know it, said, well, you're talking, maybe you could be on the committee. And it kind of grew from there. So it was my entry into it was very unusual in that not a sporting person, not a physically active person, not someone who would identify as, oh, I love the industry. I've always been that. In fact, I kind of got dragged along by someone who needed a lift. But this is where I go, if I go right to the other end, what about the world? What about people? What about how do we get, the 4.5 million Kiwis that are not engaged with our industry? It's like, they're like me more than they are like well, I've always been the sporty kid at school in the first 15. It's like, well, that's great, but that's not how most people identify. So most people identify with challenges, and whether it's my challenge or another different challenge. And that's the thing, that if we're going to grow our industry from the 500,000 into, let's just say 1 million, we need to be able to attract ourselves to more and more different types of people, because otherwise we'll just get the same kind of people. We'll get the active to be blunt, white middle class people going to gyms. And while we can all have the exception of what about Johnny who's 90, that's fantastic. But where are the tens of thousands of 90-year-olds who we all know would benefit from exercise, and you know, and certainly any demographic you like, whether it's age, whether it's ethnicity, whether it's socio-demographic, you know, the groups that are challenged to join our product, and we know we can help them, and that's where I think the ultimate huge potential is.
Yeah, I like it. I'd like to come back to that, because that's probably one of the questions that's further down my list.
Yeah, sure.
So, I mean, you've kind of hinted at how you then got into the industry. So when you sold your businesses, was that the point at which you took over this role, or was there a transition into the role that you're in now?
Yeah, so in fact, part of this role was part of the reason I sold my businesses. I'd been working in the gym for probably about 10 years. And then I decided, I got involved with what within Fitness New Zealand. It was, you know, on the committee, an unpaid role. I think at one point, I think our annual turnover was $6,000. So you can imagine we didn't do a lot, but it was a good intention, right? You know, let's have an association of people. And back then it was a gym owners association, because there was only gyms. You didn't have studios, certainly didn't have yoga, and every gym looked the same, gym circuit. Aerobics room, you know. Whereas now, of course, it's great. We have diversified, and there's lots of different product offerings. And now we now would say exercise offerings rather than just gym. And so back then it was like, enjoying this, let's do this, let's get involved in this. And then for probably 3 or 4 years, I kind of helped Exercise New Zealand, or Fitness New Zealand, to grow, eventually changed its name to Exercise New Zealand. We then employed a part-time staff member to do some sort of basic admin. I then kind of worked as the pseudo chief executive at the time for free for a couple of years. And then I realized sort of what was getting me up in the morning, what was I passionate about? You know, that's always the thing of what, if you can do something that you truly love and truly passionate about, and, you know, if I won lotto tomorrow, what would I still do what I do today? And I was saying to someone the other day, I would, except I'd just skip some bits. You know, I won't do that, and that, because I can choose not to. But fundamentally, what I do, absolutely. I might work 3 days a week, but I would still do what I do. And that's the thing that kind of got me thinking, running gyms. I was very passionate about talking to the government about trying to change regulations for childcare in gyms. I was very passionate about saying, how can we grow this industry? How can we collaborate together to do marketing or something like that? And you're going, that's interesting. That's not about my gym. It's about us collectively. And then when I realized, well, actually, let's explore the possibility of exiting. I always say with a business, there's sort of 2 points you should congratulate someone: when they start it and when they sell it. And you should always think about, how might I exit? Now, in the case of a PT, it may not be selling it, but how do you exit that to the next phase? And so in the case of a gym, you can sell it. And I did. One of them was to some staff, and then my sort of bigger gym was actually to Les Mills, and it kind of got merged into their operation when they were actually building a new one. So it kind of worked in well timing wise. And then, sort of funny enough, post-quake, what was the old gym building got destroyed, and it's right next to where Les Mills now is. So there's a bit of a history there, but that's kind of where it got to. But I morphed from one to the other, and I kind of did this job for free for a couple of years when I could, because I was being paid by my gym, and like, I'm the boss. It's my gym. I can do what I like. I think if I was working for someone, I probably would have been fired, because it's like, you're spending too much time on this other stuff that we're not paying you to do. But I was the boss, so it was okay.
Good. And there's some way you enjoy working out yourself now, even though you don't own it. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's quite a different experience having. I remember the first few times, like, I could literally go to the gym, and if the treadmill didn't work, doesn't worry, I'll just use the next one. Whereas if when any gym or studio owner knows, it's actually it's a different experience working out in your own gym. But when you work out in someone else's, great. I just get to use it, and so it's now I love using the product. I used to, because I used to teach group exercise, I still do it. Funnily enough, I choose to do all the programs I've never taught. So I don't, and it's not a religious, absolute hard and fast rule, but I don't actually do the programs I've taught. I do RPM. I've never taught cycling. So to me, it's just a product for a consumer. For me as the customer, I enjoy that. I don't do pump or step. I used to teach that, and not to say I probably really enjoy that class, but I just find that, it's like when people, retire from tennis, they generally go play golf. It's hard to enjoy the tennis when you used to be the number one in the world, kind of thing.
Makes sense.
So
day to day, in terms of now, obviously you've been in this role for a number of years. It's changed from where it started. What do your days look like? I want to get into more about sort of the WHO stuff and speaking. There's a lot of speaking that you do. What do your other days look like in terms of the times we don't see you?
Yeah, sure. So I mean, there's always that big picture stuff that which is sort of slowly working on behind the scenes, and you'd almost arguably say that's the important but not urgent stuff. Really important. Working with government, talking about some of that bigger picture stuff. But then you've got the instant. There's a thing today that needs to be dealt with, and I'm going to put COVID to the side because we talk about that too much, even though it's obviously very important and sometimes very urgent. But today, for example, there was a club that had a question in relation to a transgender person wanting to visit the club and use the changing rooms of the gender that they identified at, but yet they were biologically another gender, and that was potentially going to create a challenge or a question. So we contacted the Human Rights Commission. We're working to support the club through that. And that's obviously a very specific thing, but it's a good example of that's going to be a thing. We're going to have to deal with it. We are actually thinking about, and we have been working on a guide for the industry on these very issues, because rather than saying, wait till the question to come, well, here's the guide, here's the things you need to think through, and here's the things that you can do to make people who are transgender more welcome at your facility. And so that's just an example of stuff. We often say, if we can focus on the things that we all have challenges on, and somehow get together information and then disseminate it to everybody, that enables you to then focus on running your business and doing that, rather than you have to find out the new regulations for paying someone on a Sunday because the law's changed. Right, well, we'll do that for you, and here it is, and we'll put it in a one-page checklist. And sometimes it's a bigger thing than that. It could be, health and safety, which is obviously a far larger item. But again, rather than you having to become an expert in it, it's like, we'll do the work, we'll get the experts in, and then we'll give you the resource or the tools or the samples or the whatever it happens to be. And so a lot of my work is coordinating those kind of things, and then dealing with the stuff that is, it's a bit like when you manage a club, you've got the kind of, let's do the strategy, trying to grow the business longer term, where's our promotions, and then, by the way, that shower broke. So I better fix that as well. So there's a combination of the two. Obviously, as we grow as an organization, we now have 10 staff nationally, most of us based in Christchurch, but we have someone in Auckland and someone in Wellington. I have staff and more doing those operational things, but I'm very mindful as an industry body, the thing that we need to be close to is our industry. So I want to talk to the clubs, I want to talk to the managers, I want to talk to the trainers all the time. And people often say, oh, thanks for your time. It's like, no, this is what I do. As much as I might be the CEO, but I need to have my finger on the pulse. It was good when I ran and owned a club, because I could say, well, I know this, but it's been more than 10 years. When I sold my clubs, there were no such thing as 24/7s. So I never claim to say, well, I know how to run clubs today. I don't. I have not run a club in the last 10 years. However, I speak to lots of club operators, and lots of those ask me these things or tell me these things, and therefore I am informed about it because I talk to lots of different people. And the same thing with trainers. I need to make sure I understand that. And, I would say to people, I've used a personal trainer now for more than 20 years, and I think that's really important, because a lot of people would say, but surely you know how to work out by now. It's like, yeah, exactly. And if you think that's the reason you use a trainer, you don't understand what a trainer offers. So I'm a big boy. I know how to do bench press now, and so it's, and I'm self-motivated. I can go to the gym all by myself, and so it's not that either, but there are, all the reasons why we know that personal trainers are good. So having that perspective, I think, whether it be a customer perspective, is so important. And also, I'm a human being that has challenges. Tell you what, during COVID, I was on television telling everyone that should stay active, and yet it was my least active period. I was probably working, 12 to 14 hour days. I had a very small home gym and hardly touched it, because I'm human, and drank way too much wine.
And that's the reality of a lot of people's lives, isn't it? There's never this perfect situation. There's always highs and lows depending on the workflow. We got a really good glimpse last year of the fact there's so much that goes on behind the scenes that we don't know, when you were in front of I think it was a select committee, and having a proper Zoom dialogue with members from different sides of the Parliament. And it just gave me a really it sort of summed everything up to me in however long that was, and I listened to it with fascination, because you were very well prepared. You'd done all the homework. You were literally delivering the policy for our industry to these guys who really didn't know much about it, but because you were so credible, they were nodding and accepting, and I just thought, yes, this makes sense. You don't just jump on a Zoom with those guys. There must be lots that happens to allow that relationship to just occur, so that you can have those conversations when the shit hits the fan, and those things have to happen.
Yeah, look, I think it was interesting when I knew when the ACT MP, the Green MP, and the Labor MP all agreed. You go, we've got to get something right? Because generally they're just arguing with each other because they don't actually care about the topic, right? It's like, can you actually help us getting on with the topic? And so it's great when that's happening. I think we've got it through. We've cut through, and it's very interesting. If I look at my equivalents, because they had a lot of sporting and recreation bodies on that day, pretty much everyone, I heard the few before and after, and they were basically saying, we're in trouble. COVID's hurt us. We need $47 million to survive, and here's why. And pretty much everyone was saying, we're in trouble. We need money. And our approach was entirely different. And we said, the exercising public are in trouble. We provide benefits to these people in these ways in terms of physical activity, but also there is a health cost. Right now, the health system is going to be overloaded with cost from COVID, but also from other issues. And we want to help. We're not asking for money, although, of course, there may well be money moving later on. But the objective is to help Kiwis stay active because of all the reasons that is good for you. But that also benefits the taxpayer. This is, you can look at exercise as an individual thing, but also as a collective thing. If we are all more active, that is good for all of us, including the people that are, contributing tax dollars into the health system. That is ultimately going to be overloaded, whether it be COVID or not. Education and health are always things that are bottomless pits. You can still throw hundreds of millions of dollars in it and won't solve all the problems. But if we can lower the burden, from preventable diseases, and there's just so much in that space, and that's a whole probably different topic or a whole entire topic. But we get that. Work in the industry, I think we understand that. Often the politicians don't. And this is this whole: are we wellness? Are we health? Are we exercise? Well, I think we are exercise, and we provide wellness and health benefits as a flow on. But when they get that, they get it. And what's the interesting thing is, it's great when you talk to some of them and you realize, you actually go to the gym. You know this already. And often I try to find out which of the MPs I'm talking to actually go to the gym. And I don't care how often they go. I don't really care what they do. You can go, once a week, twice a week. You can go every day and be a gym junkie. It doesn't matter. You understand and you see it yourself. Even if you go, I've joined the gym and I don't go as much as I want to. Great, you're human. But you understand and you want to do this more, as opposed to, why would I ever join the gym? You sometimes see that with media stories where they're basically, the writer of the story is justifying why they don't go to the gym. It's like, if you don't want to go to the gym, don't go to the gym. I'm not going to, so if you don't want to eat your vegetables, don't do that either. I'm not going to give you a lecture about it. However, if we're talking public health message, we want more people to be active, and going to the gym is one of the ways you can do that. Doing yoga is one of the ways you can do that. You can walk your dog as well. These are all good things.
There's a number of sound bites. I've seen you on TV. I've heard you on the radio. Are those opportunities things that you seek out to make the connection so that the general public get this message, or are some of those, we'd like you to come on and speak?
So early on, we made a decision to be a lot more proactive in the media engagement. If I go back 10 years, pretty much the only time they'd contact us was around gym contracts and people being asked to pay money for not going to the gym. And every New Year's, they'd talk about people joining the gym and then not going. And that was the media always wanted to because negative stories are always more interesting and always more, you think about clickbait, it's negative. Positive stuff doesn't work. Person went to gym, quite enjoyed it, lost a bit of weight. That's not a story. But that happens every day. And so what we wanted to do was be more proactive. So we went to many years ago on a proactive, we would do media releases several a month to all the major media. Sometimes they pick them up, and that's when, they sometimes interview us off the back of it, and sometimes not. But what we've also noticed recently is they'll definitely respond to that. So I'd say probably 3/4 of what you see of me in the media is us doing a release first. Here's the latest research on another reason why you should exercise. Many of the viewers listening to this would go, I know that already. Great. Remember, you're not the audience. It's the media people who want a new story about some latest benefit of exercise or stat on physical inactivity in New Zealand and why that means what it means. And then the other one is occasionally they'll just phone me up and say, hey, here's the thing. I remember one time they phoned me and said, we're going to talk about the Auckland Marathon and people who are getting injured on it. And like, I'm not an expert in running marathons, but I'm happy to talk about anything if I can promote our industry. So it's like, yep, I'll be on that. What do you want to talk about? And it's like, apparently a couple of people were getting injured from actually, I think there were 3 or 4 people who were collapsing from heat exhaustion every year, and they wanted to talk about that. Fine. And it's like, well, actually, you got to put it in context. 40,000 people do this. Actually, it's pretty cool, but isn't it good people are active? And I just went back to but staying active is the key. You've always got exceptions. And actually, you've also got to look at, maybe it wasn't heat exhaustion. Maybe that person actually didn't drink enough water before. You don't know. But again, that was a really good example of, I'd say it was almost outside my lane, but I'm happy to bring that topic into our lane, which is let's be active. Because overall, if we're talking about injuries, even in gyms, it's a good thing because more people are active. Now, individually, that particular accident could have been prevented if we did this and this. But if we're talking about a public message, which is, 500,000 Kiwis go to the gym, 10,000 of them get injured with soft tissue injuries every year, overall, that's still good. Because the only way you're going to reduce those completely to zero is by stopping people going to the gym, and that's not a good thing. So let's put it into context. It's like cycling and helmets. There's sort of an argument of not wearing a helmet is actually a good thing for cycling, but that's a whole different topic because it actually putting cycle helmets actually lowers people's willingness to cycle, which is an interesting one. Because you got overall public health, which is better. Now, again, I'm not advocating don't wear a cycle helmet, but it's an interesting one when you start looking at individual decisions as opposed to the collective. Because what's the objective you're trying to achieve here? I would say more physical activity, good, and more. And we'd say more structured physical activity. We might call that exercise. But I think that's the objective we're trying to go for. And most of those will be at gyms, at facilities. Not to say you can't do it elsewhere, but that is the vast majority of where people do it. 500,000 Kiwis do it. Great. You're one of those people that offers that to the public. Great. How can we help and support you to do what you do?
Yeah. That brings me back nicely to the question of the biggest challenge. What's our biggest challenge outside of COVID? Of course, you've mentioned COVID, and we all talk about it a lot. But biggest challenge. What's facing us? That I think you may have touched on this at the beginning. Yeah.
Look, I think the biggest challenge, and I'd probably rephrase it almost as the biggest opportunity. I look at so many industries, and not, again, putting COVID to the side, that COVID probably highlighted it in some cases, how vulnerable they are to their own future in terms of what's the future of, I'll just say newspapers is a good example. You go, where do we think? Do we think newspapers are going to grow over the next 50 years? And even over the next 1 or 2 years, would you recommend to a younger person, that's where you should spend your time as a career? You might say probably not. Certainly printed pieces of paper are going to decline. Now, whether or not there's an industry in journalism, I don't know, but I can certainly say that part of it. But if I look at our industry, it's likely to grow, and not only likely to grow, I can prove it with statistics. For the last 20 years, it's grown faster than the economy in every Western country, especially in New Zealand. We're almost recession-proof. We've grown through most of the recessions. Even COVID, as challenging as it was initially, we've actually survived it. And, in New Zealand, given that we had a relatively short lockdown, 98% of the industry is still here. That's really good. Not many other sectors can say that, especially the ones that are face-to-face. Of course, if you're an online business, you might still survive, but actually we're a face-to-face business and we survive. And our growth prospects are very good. So I always let's start with that. And there's a huge opportunity. And the huge opportunity is the fact that, something like 80% of Kiwis do not engage with our industry. In other words, don't use it. And something like 50% of Kiwis do not do enough physical activity at all in any shape or form. And we are the solution to that. And the reason I say that very bluntly, often we focus on obesity and type 2 diabetes, and we kind of bundle them together and say, we're the solution to that. If I'm honest, I think we are part of the solution to that. And I think we're not even first cab off the rank, if we're honest, because if you're going to do one thing to change obesity in New Zealand, I wouldn't say it's physical activity. And I'm not saying you shouldn't do more physical activity, but I say it's probably nutrition, and arguably, in fact, I might even say it's sleep. So there's and so not to say we're not part of the solution, but we're part of the solution. So we are not the solution to obesity. We are part of the solution to obesity in conjunction with a bunch of other stuff. It's complex, and of course, type 2 diabetes is just one of the side effects of that. But if you look at something like physical inactivity, we are the solution to physical inactivity, because once you start being physically active, you are no longer inactive. Tick. And I think there's a danger of focusing on just the health outcome as the focus. That's the benefit in my view. So we will help obesity, type 2 diabetes, but I'd say more quickly, we'll help mental health. We'll help anxiety, depression. Exercise is the best antidepressant on the planet. Yeah. And I'm always very careful to say, this is not advice to an individual. This is advice to the public. If you're on an antidepressant, you go talk to your doctor about going off it if you want to. You don't listen to my advice on that. But if you're talking to the public, if we all exercised more, we would have less people depressed and less people needing drugs. That's an absolute fact, and it is more effective than any drug. And again, the audience listening to this probably knows this stuff, but the fact that it actually is proven to work. And so, mental health, if you look at degenerative diseases, Alzheimer's, all the stuff that, they always say, when you die, we all have a bit of Alzheimer's in us, just whether or not it's got to us yet. We all have we're beginning to develop some sort of heart disease, because it's just the reality of the fact that your body is aging, and as it copies itself, it doesn't get it right all the time. And that's called aging, right? But most of what we associate with aging is actually is physical inactivity. And then people confuse the two, like, oh, the reason that I get up and I fall over. No, that's nothing to do with being old. Plenty, there's 80-year-olds that can jump up and down, and there's 40-year-olds that can't, and it's nothing to do with their age. It's everything to do with their physical activity. So I always go back. There's a huge opportunity. There are so many people that are not doing something. We are part of that solution. But the challenge is we need to change, and I say the collective we, around how do we engage with those people. And it's always interesting if I'm talking, again, message to everyone versus message to individuals. A good example is yoga. Yoga is amazing. Yoga is fantastic. Yoga offers so many benefits. But if you're not a yoga instructor and it's just not your style, don't do yoga. Don't offer it in your studio. Don't try to teach it. Let someone else do that. Yoga is amazing. You don't have to do it. Similarly, I think someone should help those that are over the age of 60 and be active, but you don't have to offer a seniors program. Someone does, but it doesn't have to be you. So there's a difference between we need to do this and you need to do this. You need to offer something that you're really good at for your customer base. Agreed. And it could be white middle-class people in central Auckland, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with it. And that people often get confused and they go, I've got to do yoga, I've got to do HIIT, I've got to do... No, you don't. But someone does, and someone should. And I think there's an opportunity for all of those things. But the same thing of, what about mums with pushchairs in a park? Some people, that is their thing. they're so passionate about it. But if you're not passionate about it, you're going to be terrible at it. So please don't offer a mum's pushchair class on Tuesday morning if it's not your thing. And especially probably if you're a guy. I'm not saying a guy couldn't deliver that, but it's probably going to be a lot less authentic than a woman, particularly like, hey, I've had some kids. Like, I've never had a kid and I've certainly never given birth. So me talking about it is just going to sound weird. So someone else who knows this space, is passionate about this space, you do that. And we need to look at all those options of age, of location, of ethnicity. And you don't have to always offer a product for a group. It can be, here's our product and it's available to everyone. But for sometimes it's like, how do I make that welcoming to this group? And it could be a specific program for them. If you're looking at people with disabilities, do I need to offer a program for that group of people or that particular disability or that particular health condition? Sometimes people who are cancer survivors want to hang around with other people who have similar challenges. Sometimes they go, I don't want to be around people that have got cancer as well. I want to get back to normal life. Great, just go to the class. So sometimes actually you've got to be a bit careful here how you do this. But again, going back to what's that opportunity? The 4.5 million people that don't use our product that could. And I think if I was to grow it from 500,000 to 1 million, I think we can do that with us, just our industry. If I was to grow it from 1 million to 2 or 3 million, we need to do that with government. We need to do that with employers. We need to do that with families and whānau and churches and you name it. There's probably a whole bigger conversation. But we could double our industry without anyone else's help if we, as a collective, we just started to look for how can we attract these different markets. And you don't have to do all of them, but you have to do one of them, and you have to find it, and you have to do it well. Which is what everyone's doing already, but know what it is, and don't listen to anyone else saying you should do yoga, you should do HIIT, you should do epigenetics. Hey, if you just run a gym and you let people come in and you charge them a reasonable price, and that's your position, and you know that that's what you want to offer, that's okay. And not everyone should do that, because we need a bit more specialization than that. But that's perfectly okay to offer that space that has some weights in the corner that people can come in and use. I'll give you some guidance so you know what you're doing, but that's what we do. That's just what we do here. I don't do personalized stuff. And again, I would personally say, well, that's not the product I want. That's probably not the product I'd want to deliver if I was running a gym. But there's nothing wrong with that product. But many would judge and say, oh, you can't do that. You should be doing more of this. Nothing wrong with that. Again, it won't attract everyone. This is not what this is about. It's about how do we collectively work together to do the 4.5 million, but individually find our space within that.
And so that kind of answers a lot of the question in terms of that longevity, staying in the industry. It's finding the thing that you're good at, finding the thing that you're specialist in, and marketing that to your audience, to the people that want that.
Yeah, absolutely.
There must be other things as well, though. There must be other components that you would have seen yourself in terms of those who get into the industry and maybe question it or don't succeed. There may be other ingredients other than just being good at targeting your audience and sticking to your knitting.
Yeah, I think so. Look, I think particularly if I was talking to a trainer as opposed to a facility owner, I mean, most people would not say, well, I'm 18 years old, I'm going to go buy my own gym. Good on you if you do, but that's probably not the path that most would take. But for some reason, we're very unique as an industry. We say we're going to train you up, and particularly to a younger person that might have left school, got a bit interested in this industry, and then gone off and done a tertiary education. Great, I'm now qualified PT. So they, in their early 20s, and the first thing we do is say, great, you're in an independent business. Here you go, pay me some rent, and you can use studio. And there's nothing, the gym is not doing this in a bad way. But the problem is, it's like imagine a dentist, a lawyer, an accountant. The first thing they do is not set up their own business. They go, I'll go work for a law firm, or I'll go work as a practitioner within someone else's business, and probably get paid less than if I was doing it all by myself. But I'm going to learn how to be that thing because I'm qualified, but I'm not yet good at that thing.
Yeah.
And for some reason with PTs, the first thing is like, go on, run your own business. And there's nothing wrong with that, but it's interesting. It's probably the only industry I can think of that does it. No dentists at 21 leave dentistry school and then set up a dentistry practice. You go, are you crazy?
Yeah.
Or even I will rent a chair out of someone else's dentistry practice. Maybe hairdressers are closest to that. Some of them, go the kind of the model which is similar to a PT, where they're kind of renting a space within a salon. But it's unusual in most industries. And so I think that's part of the challenge that we have. And so, and if I'm thinking within a gym, so whether or it's a studio, where they're saying, you come in, you're basically running your business from our location. It needs to be a partnership, and a true partnership, as opposed to you're like a member where you're paying money for a service. It needs to be to gym to recognize, particularly for the new trainer, that where they're at, they actually don't know what they don't know, and they will fail generally for all the reasons that have got nothing to do with their exercise knowledge and everything to do with their ability to run a business and or attract clients. And I'm sure you've had many a conversation about this. And this is, say no PT fails for giving out a bad program. I mean, maybe they do, but probably they're not the ones we want to stay in the industry. The vast majority fail because they can't fundamentally understand what is the product they're offering, and how do I sell that to someone who basically, well, I can get that online. And if you think that's a challenge, then you don't understand your own product. I often say to a PT, would you have a PT? If the answer is no, I know what I'm doing. You don't understand your own product. If you genuinely think you don't need a personal trainer because you're a personal trainer, then you don't understand your own product. It's not about knowledge. Knowledge is required, but it's not the thing you're selling. Because if it was knowledge nowadays is free on the internet, right? I can get everything that you or I know is available on the internet. How to find it, of course, is the challenge, because there's lots of fake stuff out there as well. Yeah. But you just look at Facebook pages where you have to roll your eyes, where people are giving advice to each other about everything, including exercise. Yeah. And so, this is the challenge for our industry. And so if we want longevity in our trainers, we need to look at that model and how do we support the trainer. Now, maybe it's change the model, or maybe it's keep the model, but support the trainer more. Or maybe it is, if you're the trainer, you make the decision to do something that might have a lower income, but more secure income in the early stages. I know many, there are places where you can go and you are going to be mentored by someone rather than just charge the rent. And whether that be a big club or a small studio, there are lots of ways that you can slice and dice this, but look at that to make sure, because this is not about how successful you are in the first 6 months. It's about how you can survive so that eventually you've got any successful trainer, they're basically too busy, like going, I'm not taking on new clients. And go, what do you do for advertising? I don't
need to.
Again, and that's great, and it's positive, and it's like so many industries. Once you're good at it, you're not doing all the stuff that you have to do when you're new. And this is the thing. Again, just to touch on one thing. Advice I always give to people is, when you look at someone successful, don't do what they do what they did, because what they're doing now is what they need to do to keep being successful, which is they probably upskill like hell. They probably spend no time marketing, but they spend every time delivering great product to their customer. And also they probably network lots. Again, they'll probably do other things as well. But when you look at what they did 5 years ago, no, they worked really hard. They might have worked 6 days a week and they only work 5 now. They might work 3.5 now. Good on them. Don't work 3.5 when you're starting though. Again, if you want to get where they got, do what they did, not what they're doing. Now, again, times have changed, so maybe don't do exactly what they did, but you need to do the thing. They went out there, they were offering, trial programs. They were offering this, that, and the other. They were trying to, doing corporates. They were knocking on doors and saying, hey, here's my flyer. I imagine you don't do that in your business because, one, you don't have time to do it. And secondly, if you get a new inquiry, you go, sorry, I can't take you. Great problem. But, again, if I look at you and go, oh, great, so I shouldn't give out flyers. No, you should if you're new. Just not if you're experienced. Right. And maybe it's not going to be flyers now. Maybe it's going to be a Facebook post. That's where I'm going to spend my energy. So I'm going to do the modern version of what you did.
Yeah. Absolutely. That's good advice. Any other tips? I'm kind of aware of the time we're getting on. Sure. I don't want to take up too much more of your time. Any other tips before I ask you a final wind down question?
Look, the only tip I would say, I think this industry is awesome. And I say that because I genuinely believe it has massive potential. It has massive potential for the people in it, and has massive potential for the people that use our product. And I passionately believe in it. And I think if you share that view, either, you know, the industry view of how awesome the potential is, or at least the fact that you can improve and change lives one-on-one or in a group, then carry on doing what you're doing. Because that's the thing, that you remember what we do is awesome and it's growing. I can't think of many other industries that are both. There's plenty of growth industries that aren't particularly awesome, and there's plenty of awesome industries that aren't really growing. We're an awesome industry that changes people's lives, and it's likely to grow. I think it'll grow 50% over the next 20 years at least, and that's kind of if we do a bad job.
Geez, that's huge. That's huge. So thank you, Richard. So final question. What do you like to do to wind down? What do you do in your free time? What sort of helps relax you?
So I do probably two things, both of which are, again, if your PH360 profile people will know, you know, so I'm an activator, which you can probably guess the way I speak, but I do active recreation. So I sail. I like sailing, so I sail on the weekends, and I was not a sailor. Most people sort of sailors are like my, you know, parents were a sailor and granddad was a sailor. It's like, no, I took it up about 5 years ago. And the other thing I do just recently is Kung Fu. And for me, that is my form of yin. It's like, it's yin to my life of yang. And while there is a physicality to it, it's actually more about rhythm, and it's good because, you know, as someone that I did it 20 years ago, but I feel like I'm new to it again. So it's engaging my brain and my body at the same time. I kind of, the gym space, I know what I'm doing, even with a new move, I'm comfortable in that space. This is something that's new and challenging for me, but also it's very relaxing. So I like that. And again, it's sort of, find the thing that helps you to unwind, whether that be being physical, or whether that be being alone and going for a walk in a mountain, or whether that be just, you know, it's okay to be inactive as well. But I always look at for that, how do I recover? I'm a big fan of recovery now. I structure my recovery in a way that I never used to.
We have to, don't we, at this age?
Oh, absolutely, it's true. Otherwise, I mean, my PT always says, you know, what's your number one objective? Number one objective: don't get injured. If I get injured, I can't train. And then number two, I've got these goals, but don't, and that's more on me, right? So I'm reminded of me, don't injure yourself. Because if I get injured myself, then if I get injured in my shoulder, that's it. Particularly if I injure my lower body, I can't even do cardio, I'm out, you know? And no one wants that, right? So
no. Not if you're active, because that's the lifeblood of energy and happiness.
Does your head in? It's like, no
totally.
way.
Yeah. That's awesome. Thanks, Richard. I think thanks for your candor and just sharing so much. And I really appreciate the time that you've been able to give to us. So many thanks, and have a great weekend, and speak to you soon.
You're welcome. Bye for now.
Cheers.